Today I'm going to be conducting an ASQ remote presentation, and the title of that session will be Why Lean Six Sigma and/or Six Sigma deployments fail, and what you can do to resolve the issue. This session is being recorded. It'll last about 60 minutes. I'd like for you to participate in the session through the chatting questions in the window. I'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, so please type your questions in the chat box. So the agenda for today is, first I'll be talking about Deming's red bead experiment. I've asked all of you to download an article that will be used during this session. I've asked you also to fill in the blank questionnaire to download that you should be completing during this presentation. Basically, I'll be making references to statements in the article that I think are important, and then you can fill in the blank for those various statements as we go through the presentation. After I discuss the article, then I'll talk about what my response and expectations were to fill in the blank responses for the questionnaire. Next, we'll talk about takeaways that I think you should have and applications of the methodologies that were described in the article. And then as a bonus, I'll give you some links to additional information. Basically, I can send you an email if you just send me an email asking for the information to over 20 links. And I'll be talking about that later in the session. This is the article that I hope that you downloaded. If you didn't download it, it's not the end of the world, but I'll be making reference to this article as we're going through the session. This is what the questionnaire looked like that I asked you to download, and hopefully you'll be working through this questionnaire as we progress through the presentation. Now, in the 80s, Dr. Edwards Deming had a red bead experiment which he conducted within many of his 4-day workshops. Now, the experiment was quite simple. It consisted basically of a container that contained red and white beads. Now, red beads were bad, white beads were good. And what he did was he called various people up to the front of the room, and they took on roles as operators and inspectors and managers and so on. He set out the objective of having 3 beads that were colored red or less, because that's what the executives determined was necessary for the operators to produce. So I'm going to be doing a simulation of the kind of information that he could have had in this various session, this experiment that he might have in the front of the room. I'm going to have basically 3 operators, and I'm going to be conducting this experiment over 2 days. So let's see how operator number 1, Anthony, did relative to putting the paddle into the container, and I hope that he got 3 or less red beads. So let's see how Anthony did. Anthony, you didn't do very well. You have 11 red beads. I thought you understood that you need to have 3 red beads or less. You need to do better. Your job depends upon it. The company's dependent upon you. If you don't perform, I don't know what's going to happen to you as far as the longevity at this company. Jamie, you did worse than Anthony. 13 red beads. Didn't you understand we're supposed to have 3 red beads or less? What's the issue? You're going to have to work harder. Work harder. Brad, 14 red beads. You're worse than Jamie, and Anthony. Didn't you hear? You're supposed to have 3 beads or less. What's the issue? You need to do things better. Again, your job depends upon this. Let's go to day 2. Anthony, well, you did better than yesterday, but still, you're to have 3 red beads or less. What's the issue? You got to do things better and smarter. Now, your job depends upon it. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep you in this company. Jamie, oh my goodness, 11 red beads, that's terrible. You should have 3 red beads or less. Your job depends upon it. The company depends upon it. The executives met and we said we have to have 3 red beads or less. Brad, well, you did a lot better than before, but my gosh, you're still not meeting the objective of 3 red beads. This is terrible. Well, let's see how all you guys did, and we're going to have to let the one that didn't do as well as the others go, because we can't afford this. We got to have less red beads. Oh my gosh, none of you are even close to the objective of 3 red beads. Jamie, I'm sorry. Looks like you're the one that's the low performer, and I guess he's going to have to go. It's too bad. Good luck. Was there anything wrong with this particular simulation? Did you see anything that might have been wrong in how management was handling the whole situation? Basically, there's 20% of the beads in this container are red. That's in other words, about 10 beads is what we'd expect on the average to actually be drawn from the container. So we set out expectations that were really not physically possible. Do we do the same sort of thing with red, yellow, green scorecards? Is there much difference? As I noted, I'll be talking to this particular article. I'll be highlighting some points in it, and hopefully you'll note, fill in the blank as we go through this presentation. So do you know anybody that's been laid off? Maybe they worked in Lean Six Sigma, they worked in process improvement, but all of a sudden the times in the company were a little challenging, and so some people had to be let go. Maybe you were even one of the people that had to be let go. Now, everyone knows that organizations must improve or they're not going to survive. Now, we've had many types of programs in the past: total quality management, quality circles, Lean, Six Sigma. But often these deployments have the best intention, but they often don't work so well. Now, in addition, there's been some business management philosophies. We've had Deming create a philosophy, 14 points. We have Duran, we have Crosby. These gurus have created business management systems, but how well do we actually execute those systems? Now, I think you can boil this down into 2 different categories. The first one is the issues with Deming's red bead experiment relative to management, ranking people, and so on relative to what they've done today has some issues. It's not any different than the red, yellow, green scorecards, as I noted before. We're establishing these objectives, but are those objectives really obtainable? Or are they just up and down movements that we have in the system, and you kind of luck of the draw? Now, the second thing is management by objectives. We tend to manage by setting goals throughout the organization and people to meet these goals, or else. Now, that can lead to a lot of bad behaviors. It can also lead to creating metrics that don't make sense. For example, in the United States, Wells Fargo's false accounting scandal. So what do we have relative to Lean Six Sigma deployment? Now, as I mentioned earlier, we start with the best of intentions, but does it lead to the right behaviors? With Lean Six Sigma deployments, we're often examining the amount of financial benefits from these various projects we're undertaking. Now, what actually can happen is we've reported we've saved $100 million, but nobody can find the money. Now, Lean deployments can have some issues too. We may be doing many, many Kaizen events, but if we step back, we can ask the question of all this work that we did, getting operations involved with it, operators, and everybody else involved that's close to the process in making these improvements. But if we step back, how did it really improve our performance metrics? Often we don't have that linkage. And what I'm suggesting, that's an issue. Now, what can we do to make a system so that we have long-lasting improvement deployment? Now, often we say in Lean Six Sigma, we do need to do a better job to figure out which projects to work on. We start with a problem statement. Somebody gives it to us, and then we go in and try to work and fix that problem statement. I've had Lean Six Sigma practitioners and so on that they went in and said, I want to be the best problem solver. And I said, my goodness, I don't. I want to be the best problem preventer. Firefighters are very good problem fixers, at least for a while, but that doesn't mean that I want to become one of them. And what I suggest, we really want to go in and be a good problem preventer. And I think one of the things that happens with Lean Six Sigma deployment, we start looking at a problem statement, but really we need to focus on what metric do we really want to improve through the organization. Because if we're going to make process improvement, how do we know we made an improvement unless we have a good metric to look at and examine from a baseline point of view? Now, more often than not, I've seen presentations, articles, and so on. The Lean Six Sigma projects are just anecdotal. They don't really show any metric that they actually improved. They don't necessarily show how that align to the business metrics as a whole, not just strategies, but business metrics as a whole. And I'm suggesting that's an issue. I've had people come in the Master Black Belt training, and they're talking about all these projects they did, and I said, well, show me what you got. Their anecdotal statement. I said, if you were your boss's boss, and you had to make judgment on your performance and whether you should stay on the job, would you keep yourself on the job? I wouldn't if that were that person. From what you've shown me, I want to see proof that you made a difference in metrics that help the big picture. So to me, I'm thinking that's what's really important, what we have. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, I'm suggesting using an operational excellence system. Now, operational excellence means different things to different people. Some people say it's just process improvement. Now, I like the old definition that Wikipedia had, and that's listed on this page here, but I want to focus on the last 6 words. It talks about sustainable improvement of key performance metrics. I think that's what's really needed, but Six Sigma doesn't really do that. You know, we want to go in and figure out alignment of these projects to the metrics that are important to the business. And that's what I think is really important to do. Now, in order to accomplish that, we need to do a couple things. We need to first have performance measures must be reported from a process point of view. And we need to have linkage between processes and the metrics that they produce. Now let's look at number 1. If we're reporting in our organization red, yellow, green scorecards, table of numbers, pie charts, bar charts, that sort of reporting, that's not from a process point of view. So looking at this form of reporting, and you went in and did some work in your creating process improvement efforts, how are you going to be able to see if you really made an improvement? You really can't. They're not reported from a process point of view. So I'm suggesting that's an elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. Now, what's missing in the table of numbers, red, yellow, green scorecards, and so on, is variability. Processes have variability in their outputs. It could be for many reasons. And we need to go in and look at and include that variability in how we're actually examining these metrics and determining if we should make improvements or not, how we examine metrics. Now, what I'm suggesting is we look at metrics from a different point of view. We want to separate common cause variability from special cause events. So common cause variability is basically the normal variability that we'd have within our process. Now, we can also have special events. Something unusual occurs. Now, we have right to go in and look at those particular instances, say what happened. Maybe IT went down, the whole server went down. And that was a special cause because of an unusual lightning storm. And maybe we want to talk about that event specifically. However, if we got common cause variability, like we had in the red bead experiment, then the thing is we need to improve our process if we don't like the answer. So that's what's really important. Now, Deming coined these words, common and special cause, for control charting. Now, I'm not doing the same thing that is done in control charts. What I'm suggesting is a 30,000 foot level report out. Now, it uses an individual's chart, but it doesn't use an X bar and R chart, P chart, U chart, and C chart. And I got articles and my books describe why that's important from a 30,000 foot level point of view. So I want to go in and examine data from a 30,000 foot level point of view and determine what I should be doing to address improvements in metrics. Now, maybe I've got high level unusual events and I need to talk about those, or I might just have a common cause variability. So to illustrate common and special cause variability separation, I'm going to use an illustration. Let's consider the time it takes you to commute from home to work. Let's say you do it by car. Is it going to take you the same amount of time to the second every day? Well, obviously not. Why? Got more different delays one day than the other at stop signals. You might have traffic that's a little heavier one day than the other, and so on. So let's consider it takes us 25 to 28 minutes. Okay, that's our common cause variability. Now let's change that. Let's say it's 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so that's my common cause variability. Now let's say I want to reduce the amount of time it takes to get there. And I want to change it to 28 minutes. So now if it's greater than 28 minutes, I'm going to try to figure out what happened. But I just said that's common cause variability. And so you're going to have false signals for whether you should be looking at that particular instance, because it might be just normal variability of process. So if you got normal variability process and you don't like the answer, you got to change what you're doing. So let's say we decide to leave it half an hour earlier. So if we leave it half an hour earlier, now it takes us 18 to 20 minutes to commute. So we've reduced the average time and also the variability by changing our process. So if we look at a metric and got common cause variability from this 30,000 foot level point of view, then we got to do something different to our process. And the proof of the pudding is we got a change and we can see what that looks like. So a 30,000 foot level chart looks like this. It's the one shown on figure number 1. So at the top, we're looking at the average value and the standard deviation, the log of the standard deviation, using an individual's chart. And again, we don't use an X bar and R, X bar and S chart in this. And my articles describe why that's important. Now, if we got stable process, then we can do a probability plot to determine how our process is performing. Notice I don't like to use CP and CPK, PP and PPK process capabilities indices because they can be gamed and they can lead to deceiving results. I got articles on that, and that's talked also about in my book. So in this particular case, we got a stable process from the 30,000 foot level point of view, and we got about a 34% non-conformance rate. So that's our baseline. Now, if we don't like that answer, that's common cause, we don't look at all those individual points, why one is high and why one is low, in the region of stability. It'll drive you crazy. Now, you can build hypotheses to see if you think there might be differences between a day of the week, and when did you leave, what time was school in session or not, and so on. You can build various hypotheses which can give you insight to what you might do to improve, and that's part of the process improvement effort in to make projects that you want to go in and analyze the data to give you insight to what you might go in and do to improve. But it doesn't really go in and fix anything. So let's say that you went in and you made some improvements. You want to then demonstrate that you made an improvement. Well, that's shown in figure 2. We notice that the individuals chart on the left-hand side went down. Now we look at a probability plot, and we notice with the statement at the bottom that we now have less than 1% nonconformance because of our process improvement efforts. And that's what I think we ought to demonstrate for all Lean Six Sigma projects. Then that can help the sustainability of the overall deployment. So we can see we made a change from 34% to 1%. And what I'm suggesting, we have this form of reporting throughout the organization. Now the next piece we have, number 2, is we now need to have a structured linkages between this performance metric reporting system and also the processes that created the metrics. So what I'm suggesting is we have a value chain. This is an integrated enterprise excellence value chain that's shown up in figure number 3. So the example that I'm showing you is dealing with a hospital. The main functions are connected with the arrows. The support functions are below them. We'd like to make it so we can drill down and see what we have, and that's shown in figure 4. If this were clickable, then we can have automatic updates. We can have pretty much data that's pretty timely. It's not like we're going to have second by second, but we could have an update every day. So we don't have to build necessary special reports for people at certain points in time. So we can create a sustainable system when we have it all clickable and it's automatically updated if we have that option included also. The other nice thing about this is we can have transparency. Often when we have executive report outs once every month or once every quarter, the PowerPoint presentation that gets presented is often filtered. Who wants to be the person that shares bad information, or not bad information, but things that are not looking so good up the chain of command? So sometimes things get filtered. Well, what I'm suggesting, if you have this so you have automatic updates, then the thing is you eliminate that issue about filtering. Because there's issues that in Texas we had bluebell ice cream listeria problems where people died because of the contamination of the ice cream, and then they knew they had problems before the government shut them down. Or in the States, in the BP oil spill in the Gulf, they knew they had problems before them shut them down. So sometimes what happened is people are driven by certain metrics and other ones fall by the wayside that are very important, and that can actually destroy a company in extreme conditions. So this transparency reporting, if you have this automatically update, can be very beneficial. The other nice thing about it is now we can link the processes with them. So if we examine what we have in figure number 4, we can see the top swim lane that we have is the output for the function, in this case operations. So that's the Y, and we pick some metrics that are associated with that in a group, and the X's are below that. So typically what we have is people in the north wing of the building working on scorecards, people in the south wing of the building working on process documentation, improvement, and they don't talk to each other. So the value chain here brings it all together. Y is a function of X. So if you don't like what Y is, you got to change your X's. You got to leave earlier if you're going to commute from home to work. You got to figure out in the red bead experiment, how can you have less red beads in the overall process, in the overall container that people are drawing from. Just by going in and trying to manage to the Y, that's called management by hope. And you don't want to have management by hope. If you don't like what Y is, and it's common cause variability, you need to change the improvement. And now this value chain shows you the process associated with it. The other nice thing from this is now we can go in. If we have somebody new, we can say, hey, this is a part of your value chain where you're working. This is what you're supposed to do. We can have videos, processes, documents, and so on. So it's real nice on how to do that. Now let's say you want to make also improvements. Now what I have shown here, and this is the handout that I gave you to fill in a blank. It's included in there. It's not included in the article. But this is the IEEE 9-step system. So first start with the vision and mission, and then do your value chain. That describes what you do and how you measure what you do. Satellite or financial metrics, 30,000-foot level metrics, operational metrics. Notice how we don't have strategies until step 5. Now these are more targeted strategies than what you might often see from leadership went to an executive retreat where often it's worded like I want to be the best of the best, and we want to line it through the balanced scorecard, ocean planning, or whatever. What I'm suggesting, that's hard to get your arms around. So instead, I think what's important is to describe what you do and how you measure what you do, and that's what step 2 does. So if you're a hospital and you go in and get another hospital within your organization, they're fundamentally going to be doing the same thing as you did before. You're going to probably have similar metrics even. So it's not like you have to blow everything up relative to the metrics going in and setting goals throughout the organization, and do that whenever leadership changes or strategies changes. This is a long-lasting system. Then what you want to do is analyze the enterprise. Now, the analyze the enterprise, look into the value chain metrics, the outputs, obviously, but you also want to look at theory of constraints. Do you have bottlenecks? Do you have customer issues? Are you getting good feedback from the customers on what you ought to be doing differently? So this gives you some idea on how to use the tools that we talk about Lean Six Sigma, but also at the enterprise level. We can look at difference between departments, machines, operators, divisions, and so on, and try to figure out what might be done that's going to help the business as a whole. Notice that's different than setting goals throughout the organization, because if you're trying to improve everything, you just really don't have enough bandwidth to go in and do that, to given the level of commitment that you really need to do. Now, if somebody wants to go in and do a Kaizen event or 5S to go in and complete the housekeeping for the supply chain, go at it. But I'm talking about strategic. Then it's number 4, you want to create SMART, specific, measure, action, relevant, time-based, satellite, or financial metric goals. Now we want to create strategies that are aligned to that. making that objective happen. Number 6, get high potential areas, where now we'd like to have an owner of the 30,000 foot level metric that we want to improve. And they're going to be reporting the output of that to the boss's boss. And everybody understands for them to go in and improve it, that individual's chart has to go to a new enhanced level of performance. So they're going to be asking for the project to get done. Notice that doesn't happen in Lean Six Sigma. Often projects fall off people's plates. They don't have enough time to do it. It's really not on somebody's plate that's at a high level that really makes a difference. Other things take precedence, and often the projects never get done, or if they do get done, people often question the value of what actually was accomplished. And the other thing, they can be in a siloed area that don't affect the big picture. So now, number 7, if you did the make project and you did a good job, you improved the procedures in the value chain in step 2, which improved the 30,000 foot level metric, which improved the satellite or financial metrics for the organization as a whole. Now, you notice step 9 loops back to step number 3. So you have somewhat a Deming plan, do, check, act for the enterprise as a whole. So the big picture receives the most benefits from these process improvement efforts using this 9-step system. Again, to highlight this, process owners of strategic measurement improvements will be asking for these projects to get done. That doesn't happen traditionally in Lean Six Sigma deployments. Okay, I've given you a lot. This has been a big enchilada description of what one might do. Now, you can't necessarily start this tomorrow, but the thing is, say that you want to convey this type of approach to someone that hasn't heard this presentation. How might you do that? Well, I list 10 approaches or 10 things that you might do. Well, let's look at step number 4. Look at item number 4. We can compare traditional performance metrics report out to 30,000 foot report outs. Then describe the gains that you get from this additional report outs. Now, in one of these links that I can be sending you, I give you 8 illustrations how I took an actual red, yellow, green scorecard, table of numbers, and other forms of reporting and presented it in the 30,000 foot level format. And I was able to get a lot more information out of it than using a traditional report out. So again, my email will be at the end of this session, and you can send me an email requesting these links, and I can send it to you. Number 8, you could go in and examine the response that your project, a previous project, was to improve. You then go back to the original data, and then looking at it from a 30,000 foot level point of view, if you made an improvement, then that individual's chart should transition to an enhanced level of performance. And then you can show that to others and say, this is what I actually did with my project. And then after the end of that, if you save some money, then you can go in and look at the cost of what I call cost of doing nothing differently, and how you impacted that through your project. Now I want to highlight again, in both Lean and Six Sigma deployments, organizations can have localized benefits, but more often than not, they don't address the last 6 words of the operational excellence definition that Wikipedia used to have: sustainable improvement of key performance metrics. Now, I gave you a couple thoughts on how you might convey these methodologies to others, but I list 8 other approaches that you might consider. So I ask you to try to fill in the blank for the 20 questions that I had given you in this extra downloadable document. So let's go over those responses that I expected to hear from you or that you would report. Now, these 20 items are what I consider to be the highlights and the key points of this presentation. So what you might do here is to star something on your sheet there if you think it's important, and then you could go in and enter something in the chat session, and we could talk about it a little more if you want to. So number one, issues described in Deming's red bead experiment are fundamentally the same as red, yellow, green scorecard reporting methodology commonly used in organizations. Number two, with a Lean Six Sigma deployment, you have tracked financial benefits, noting the reported $100 million in savings. However, no one can seem to find the money. With a lean deployment, often no one can describe how these lean efforts positively affected the enterprise as a whole performance metrics. Wikipedia's operational excellence definition talks about tools towards sustainable improvement of key performance metrics. In general, Lean Six Sigma deployments and other process improvement efforts have not really focused on sustainable improvement of key performance metrics. Number six, the operational excellence need definition, performance metric reporting from a process point of view. 7, if common cause variability is occurring from a high level point of view and the response is undesirable, enhancements are needed within the process. 8, a special cause event from a high level point of view could trigger a specific investigation to understand what changed, that is good or bad, in a process at a similar point in time. In this 30,000-foot level report out, the top two charts assessing process stability, while the bottom right chart assesses process capability. This non-conformance rate is provided in an easy-to-understand sentence at the bottom of the three-chart report out. Notice control charts don't address process capability. With the 30,000-foot level report out, you go in and assess process stability and process capability in one report out in one sheet. What's important is that the process enhancement effort led to a demonstrated and quantification of improvement in the 30,000-foot level charts. Need number 2 for operational excellence, structured linkage between performance metrics and process. Again, I think this is so important that you do. 12, an integrated enterprise excellence value describes what an organization does and how it can report performance metrics from a process point of view. And I believe sustainability is accomplished through a clickable organization value chain that's available to those who are authorized. Performance metric monitoring, another benefit of this form of reporting, is that the methodology can provide transparency of performance report outs throughout the organization to those authorized. New performance project procedures can be incorporated with other functional process documentation in a readily available, clickable IEEE value chain. With this easy access to information, everybody responsible for executing the process will have a consistent description of what should be done in the process. In the make process improvement through Lean Six Sigma, we talk about a control, but what I've seen more often than not is we don't have really a control system. Where do you even keep the information? How are you going to make sure things don't change back to the old ways? Well, often we have to inspect that, which is time-consuming and wasteful. where now with the value chain, you can have your control system as part of the overall value chain. So in addition to the above, the 9-step system can be used to determine which value chain metric must be improved so that the big picture receives the most benefit from the process improvement enhancements. Process owners of these strategic metric improvement undertakings would then be asking or demanding timely completion of improvement efforts that are executed in their area. Enhance your organization's process improvement efforts. Compare the traditional performance metrics to a 30,000-foot level report out. Describe additional insights to gain report. Report demonstrate improvement results to others using a newly created 30,000-foot level chart out. That's how you can enhance your efforts in showing what you've actually done. Consider implementing other steps described in this article section. Enhance your organization's process improvement efforts. So to me, these are highlights from the session, and hopefully it'll stimulate some questions that you might have at the end of the presentation here. Now, what are the takeaways that one might have? And I asked this in a stand-up group, and this is what they gave me. Team 1 said 9-step process flow in the back of the handout page. They thought that was a major takeaway they had. Team number 2, you have to know your process in order to know what to fix. Team 3, process metrics reported from a process point of view. Team number 4, clear connection of high-level metrics being subject to common and special cause variation. So I think all these listed takeaways are quite good. So I indicated that I would be able to provide you, if you send me an email requesting this information, I can send you the links to all this information. I have a mini-tab add-in for creating these 30,000-foot level metric report outs. And it's free. You may need to have IT support to put it on a company computer, and you need to have mini-tab. But this is a link on how you could download that trial version. It's very powerful. I do have, as items 2, 3, and 4, 3 articles that you can find to be quite beneficial on looking at metrics and also improvement deployments. I do have a 1-minute video, and what I'm going to do is click on this video and show it to you right now.
Inconclusive performance metrics are when it does. How can you know what caused again 1,000 feet? Then that illuminated the underlying root cause of underperformance and helped you avoid it in the future. Trends and provides the insights you and your team need to make step change improvements for better performance and
Oops.
Good morning. We can hear you well.
Oh, sorry about that there. We got then also, if you look at the operational excellence roadmap here on end, and then this would be, point just crashed on me here. Oh, so this goes in and looks at this and make improvements to it. And then it talked about the value chain, how you can make a collection of X. Look at Then the enterprise kind of describes the whole. And so I suggest that you read over that article here. That Microsoft did on number 11. Also have another recording for 30,000 foot level charting. In addition, I got the reference books that are shown at the bottom of the page. And now you could go in and look at those books. And it basically describes everything we just talked about on how to do it. I do have also many articles and resources associated with it, and how you might kickstart such an operation. Now you can convey the benefits of what I'm talking about either through recording of this webinar, or you can also go in and look at similar sessions that have been done, and this can apply to individuals, professional, society, leadership, organizations, and so on. So just revisiting our agenda and questions and answers, talked about Deming's red bead experiment, utilization of an article in this session, fill in the blanks, questionnaires that are completed during this presentation, and then the questionnaire. And we also talked about takeaways and additional links that you can have there. So anyway, I'd like to address any questions that you have. I don't see any here.
Sorry for intervening, but unfortunately I can't type any question. I mean, it's not allowing me to type questions. No, yeah.
Oh, boy,
I don't know why.
Technology is winning here. Can you just tell me what your question is?
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for this great presentation. And my name is Danuț Iorga. And my question is related with, as I understood from you yesterday, you told me that maybe you may come in Romania and try to make a master black belt 1 week training. Is it correct?
Yeah, I can go in the 1 week training. We can go in and start looking into it. Typically, I do it as 2 weeks, so we can try to squeeze everything down into 1 week. Typically, I do it as 2 weeks, but that's a possibility. It would be intense. We can't do as much as we'd like to do, but that's a possibility too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And my second question is related to what you were showing us. I mean, it's related to the that type of 30,000 feet level, and I'm a little bit let's say more willing to know about how this type of assessment works.
Well, that's what I actually cover in the training also. It's so let's say, for example, you're looking at hold time in the call center, okay, and you want to go in and track that from a process point of view. So with 30,000 foot level charting, you need to have it so that you don't have the noise variability occurring within the subgrouping. So in other words, you might think, well, I'm going to look at hold time in the call center, and first I want to look at the average and then the standard deviation, and I'm going to randomly pick some times or some calls that were called in the call center. But let's say, for example, Monday is always worse than Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because of the weekend. So I would subgroup it by week. So I'm not trying to fix anything with 30,000 foot level report out. I'm just trying to describe the hold time in the call center generically. And this could be multiple call centers. So what I would do is I'd take a sample of calls, maybe one a week or one every day of the week for each of the call centers. And then I would look at that data on each or once a week. And that would be my time segmentation on the x-axis for both the average value and the standard deviation. And then we would go in and analyze that data to see if it's stable. And then we would do a probability plot to describe what's the hold time for individual calls. Now, in this particular case, it's bounded by 0, so we may have to do a log transformation. But once you get done with all that, then you'd have a statement at the bottom if it's stable. And even though you don't have a specification, you might be able to state my median hold time is, whenever people call in, is 60 seconds, and 80% of the time it's between 30 and 104 minutes. Okay, so if that response is not satisfactory, then you need to do something differently. You could then analyze the data. You might think there might be differences between hold time in the call center on Monday versus other days a week. So you can look at that response using analysis of means and other techniques, and you might find out Mondays takes longer, therefore you need to change your process and maybe your scheduling of people relative to Monday. Or you might find out that over lunch you have more hold time. Well, now I need to do something different over lunch to make improvements. And the proof that you made a difference by making these changes is the individuals charged in the 30,000 foot level report out transition to a new enhanced level of performance. So that makes sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, one of the things that people often ask me, and let's see if I think I put it up here. I don't know what that means. Okay, let's see. I was gonna, like, technology always has its challenges somehow. So I'm gonna go into, oh, okay. This is a value chain. I was speaking of our value chain being clickable. So if I'm looking at this value chain here, so this would be the example of the hospital one. Now, in reality, this is not automatically updated here, but I'm pulling from a cloud server here. And let's see, it doesn't take forever here to get in here. Oh, good. Okay, so now what I can do is I can actually click on this, and now I can look at profit margins. So this is what I was really referring to as a clickable value chain in the session.
Sorry, I think there are some people who were able to send questions.
Oh, they were?
Yes, they are. I think several of the people send you already some questions. Mircea Prodan is asking you something. I don't know if you can see. Hello?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm here. I don't see anything in it.
Yes, I can see. I mean, I'm not able to type, but the rest of them.
Well, why don't you go in and tell me what he said?
Yes,
now?
okay.
For some reason I can't see.
So first, Forrest, first of all, it's a big honor. This is Mircea Prodan. It's a big honor for me to attend your webinar. I started 12 years ago, learning Six Sigma with translating in Romanian few areas from your book, implementing Six Sigma. Now I am working at IBM as senior consultant. In the last period of time, there is an increased pressure from our executive demanding results today, this month, and not in 3-6 months. Obviously, they are the well-known low-hanging fruits, but usually this is not enough. How would you advise to address this challenge to show results as soon as possible?
Well, I think, to me, if you you have to do it the way I'm talking. First off, I worked at IBM 24 years, and I took a bridge of retirement in 92. So I founded Smarter Solutions. So it's been a while I've been at Smarter Solutions, but I worked there a long time. I took a design of experiment class in 1975 that changed my life at IBM in development. And I was an internal consultant there 12 years before I took a bridge of retirement in 92. But anyway, that's a footnote. But to me, if you go in and just say, I want to make an improvement, to this in next month, you first have to go in, and I'm saying this is a must. You have to say, what am I going to improve? How are you going to measure the success of the improvement? That's essential. So you then get a baseline of what it is. Maybe it's on-time deliveries or whatever. So then that to me is what's very important. Now, I don't think that Lean Six Sigma projects should take 6 months or a year. It depends upon what you're actually doing. But what I insist is that people start with the metrics on what they want to improve. So people might say, well, we want to improve something, but they don't have a real good metric. Now, they may have a table of numbers. If they have that, great. And if I got the numbers behind that table, and then you put it in a 30,000 foot level report, then you ask them if you want to improve that. Okay, then you go in and start looking at what it's going to take to improve it. Now, if you got to spend $10 million for capital equipment, well, you're not going to get it done next month. That's probably a good bet. But the thing is, you might have something that's not that difficult. You might have it that's something needs to change how they're doing it. People may be making inconsistencies or doing inconsistencies on a particular process. But if you put devoted effort into it, to me, you actually can make a difference. Now, just by going in and say, we want you to make a difference, and they're not going to give you the resources to help you out to make a difference, that's a different story. So, I don't think that that's an impossible issue at all. However, people might say they want to improve that, but then I come back, is that going to be really helping the overall the organization as a whole? So to me, you need to have that linkage and of this overall processes to the metrics and put together eventually this value chain. That's going to help you figure out which ones you want to improve. But if somebody's just giving you something to prove and you say, okay, what metric you want to improve? On-time delivery, non-conformance rates, or whatever, and then you go in and you take it on. And I think if you've got data available, you can maybe give insights to what you can do in a rather short period of time. So if you want to talk about any specifics, don't hesitate about giving me an email. Okay?
I hope our Micha Prodan were listening, and I want to thank you. There is another question from Liviu Poduroiu, is something like, isn't this top-to-bottom approach prone to fail, as such strategy it is not generally bought in, so there is not people engagement?
Well, the challenge you have, especially if you're a worker bee, you say, well, this is great, but the decision needs to be made by my boss's boss. And that's the reason I gave you those 10 items. So if this makes sense to you, let's say that you were the CEO and it made sense to you, say, this is how I want to manage a business, then what I'm suggesting is you should be going in and think about what you could do to explain it to others on how that we might be able to implement such a system in the organization. So you can have all sorts of obstacles. People don't want to get measurements that's going to describe what's happening. People don't like to change. There's a lot of reasons people won't want to do it. But the thing is, if it's the right thing to do, then you could see about navigating to the person at the top that can make that decision that you actually go in and undertake such a system. One of the things is people at the top say, I want to improve the process. But the thing is, they're not looking at measurements from a process point of view. And to me, that's an issue. So they need to go in and start looking at things at a process point of view. And that's what I'm offering with this 30,000 foot level reporting. So, and if you want to talk about any specifics on how you could talk to others or whatever, then I'm more than happy to do that. the 30,000 foot level, a video that I showed you, that 1-minute video, hopefully gives you some insight. In that article, that PDF article I made reference to, then that would be something else that you might go in and use, especially page number 2. You could ask the leadership if you have any of those issues, like strategies not getting done, setting out goals, people are not meeting them, and so on. Then they ought to look at this overall system.
Okay, I thank you. There is I think one question from Radu Beloiu. He is saying something like, a problem with Lean Six Sigma deployment is poor management involvement. How can management be involved in order to support Lean Six Sigma efforts?
Yeah, that's when I'm suggesting Lean Six Sigma traditional deployment doesn't work. That's what this presentation is all about, because we're hunting for projects, and now we need to say we need to have executive support in it. But what's happening is we're doing this process improvement efforts, and they're all anecdotal. They fall off people's plates. There's something wrong with that picture. And what I'm suggesting, the big thing is, we're not going in and making process improvement efforts that are linked to the key performance metrics. And that's what I'm suggesting is the missing link for what happened in TQM, quality circles, and everything else. People down here are working improvements, but the thing is, it didn't impact the business, the key performance metrics that organizations are based upon. So that's what I'm suggesting this system overcomes. So again, I don't think Lean Six Sigma works, but if you go in and start looking at which metrics you want to prove, then the thing is, now we want to focus on that and making that difference there using the Deming project. But then now you also have to have somebody own it at the top level, and they're going to be reporting their boss's boss how that metric is performing, because that's an important metric and that's going to help the business when you improve it. So that's going to pull for the project to get done. So the dynamics, what I'm describing here, is completely different than traditional Lean Six Sigma, which tends to be a hunt for project system. And that leads to projects are siloed, they don't benefit the enterprise as a whole, and so on. And that's what I'm offering here, a means to get around all that. Hope that helps, and hope that answers. And again, if you got any question you want covered offline, just let me know. We can do a Skype call or whatever.
Thank you very much, sir. I think this is it. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, very good. And just the value chain here, what I was talking about here, now it can become all clickable. So now you can deliver clinical services, and then it comes in and shows these are the metrics and these are the processes associated with it. You can go in and then also have you have various processes associated with it too. So you can have drill downs and so on, links to other documents and so on. So anyway, so if you'd like to have any of those links that I made reference to during this session, just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to do that. Or if you got a specific situation that you would like to talk about, then I'm more than happy to discuss that with you also, so you can send me an email on that too. So, okay?
I speak in the old name because I think all of them are agree with me. Definitely we'll send to you emails to ask for more information. And I would like to thank you once again. It was a great honor for me. And I think for the rest is also the same, because this is what I'm seeing in their messages. And I would like to thank you, and I hope that we will manage to make you come in Romania. I don't know, maybe the people will hear about this very good webinar. I mean, it was great. And after this, we managed to be, let's say, not only 13 as I see right now, but maybe 100, and it will be much better from.
Okay. Yeah, I want to, for the master black belt training, just to give you an idea what I do, is that
Yeah.
9-step system. Week number 1, I talk about the value chain, how you create these predictive measurements and so on. And then in week 2, I get into how you analyze it. And we have a clickable value chain that we create during week number 1. And then in week 2, normally what I get into the other steps of the 9-step system, and we could possibly squeeze it all together. It's going to have to not cover some stuff, but anyway, that's where I traditionally do it. And we could actually do 2 weeks in a row if that's another possibility. But anyway, we can talk about that too. So, okay, well, I enjoyed
Thank you
working
very
with
much,
you
sir.
on this, and let me know if I can help in any way. Okay?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Bye bye.